interested in, like, when I get a card, it's like, I like to think about who had this card back in the day. Like with T206 tobacco cards, you know, kids used to stand out in front of stores and beg guys who were buying cigarettes if they could have the card out of that package. And they were just cherished by somebody. So to bring somebody's collection back, even if it's a few cards or two cards, is really quite amazing to me.
Wow, wow. Going back to the ghost, I'm sorry, I know we moved on, but Lou Rock in the chat says that he says legit that room is straight up ghost, that the room is 10 degrees cooler. and he said he can attest because he's been in that room.
Yeah, I made him get naked. You know, it was like when you get, when you ever see them in the movies when they're doing the drugs and they make them get naked so they can't steal any drugs or money. We had a lot of fun.
It looked that way. It looked that way, man. So, all right. So, you know what? Let's get started. And we're going to just, you know, go just kind of just freestyle. Before we officially ask the first question, every live, I like to show a card, a special card of mine. And I know that Roberto Clemente is one of your favorite players. So I had to break out the 1955 Topps Roberto Clemente PSA grade.
Beauty.
Yeah,
oh, man,
very nice.
Definitely one of my favorite cards. So this is the caliente card of the day, of the night here.
Okay, so, let me show you a Clemente because I just got it. I just did a video today on it. So these are very rare. PSA has only ever graded one. These were Rawlings advisory. They were advisory staff photos. They ran from like 1950 to 1970, and they were used as displays where the player would prominently show the glove or a piece of Rawlings equipment, mostly a glove. And this is kind of a unique pose for him, but you could see him holding that glove up there.
Awesome.
Wow.
But I guess these were just like in stores. I don't think they were given away, and I think that's why they're so rare. But for whatever reason, so awesome. They haven't lasted a long time.
Now one of the questions I've always had for you is like, where do you find something like that?
So, I mean, I just, my go-to since it came out has mostly been eBay. And then, you know, I found a lot of stuff on Facebook. When Facebook came out, there were a lot of card groups and a lot of people, you know, selling cards on there, card shows.
Yeah.
You know, when I was growing up, you could only, you know, there was no eBay, there was no internet, and you couldn't find vintage cards anywhere. The only place you could really find them, if you weren't connected to the big shows and the community, there was certainly a card community back then, but was flea markets. And so I would go to the flea markets. I grew up, I was just a baseball fanatic, and I was a card fanatic from the time I was a very little kid. And because I was a baseball fanatic, I would read everything. That's the only thing I read. And I would go to the bookstore, and I'd always beg my mom for a baseball book, and she'd buy it for me because she knew that was how I was going to learn to read, because it's the only thing I read. I didn't read any books in school or anything. But if you gave me a baseball book, front to cover. In the fifth grade, I remember we had this beat up little book on Roberto Clemente, and every recess I would sit there and I would read it. And finally, one day, the teacher just handed it to me. She's like, just take it home with you. I'm tired of watching you read that book.
That's nice.
So, so I knew all about the old players, and I was fascinated, you know, with that old era and all the records and that the other kids my age didn't know. So when we would go to the flea market, you know, I was picking up, you know, Mantle and Koufax and Aaron and Mays, and they were picking up Steve Garvey and those kinds of players. And I collected them too, but I could get those out of packs. You know, I was drawn to the players my dad used to tell me about. And, you know, back then you get like $7 for a Koufax card or something, which was a lot of money to a kid. But I would just buy whatever I could get my hands on, and I couldn't be too picky, right? Because I didn't find them. I remember the first time I saw a Lou Brock rookie card. Man, I wanted that so bad, but it was It was a little pricey for the time, and I remember it was $22, and that was like a fortune to me. I'd never paid that much for a baseball card, and I passed up the first one, and I went to another flea market, finally found one, finally saved up the money and pulled the trigger and got it. And so I ended up with a very large vintage collection by the time I was in junior high.
Wow. That's amazing. By the time you were in junior high, you had a large vintage collection. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I had Williams, Jackie Robinson, I had everything. In fact, I remember I had a 67 Mantle. It graded a 7 when grading came out. It was one of the few ones I sent in, and I had a 56 Jackie Robinson. It graded a 6. A 56 Ted Williams graded a 7. So, you know, I had kept my cards in pretty good condition. I have a 65 Ernie Banks, came out graded an 8. Nice. They were like money to me and my friends growing up. They were more valuable than money. Absolutely. I spent every penny on cards.
Hey, you know, I'm sure it's paid dividends because some of these cards are small fortune. Absolutely. You know, Brandon Z, I see you in the chat. Absolutely. You know, thanks for joining. I've got a link to Mangini collection pinned on top in the chat. So please go ahead as you guys come in, follow him. Absolutely amazing collection. We're in for a treat, and I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question that I wanted to ask. You mentioned your mom. Where your parents? Where are they from originally?
We're from my family's from Western Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh. My mom grew up in a little town called Vandegrift. It's actually where the movie I Am Number 4 was filmed, and my dad grew up in Jeanette. And there was a famous, kind of famous Steeler that came out of there named Dick Hoke. He was a quarterback on his high school team. They went to school together, who ended up being he was a running back for the Steelers. They converted him into pros, and he ended up being the running backs coach through like 3 different coaches for like 30 years.
Wow.
And then, of course, Terrell Pryor came out of that high school, and he was a number one rated football player in the whole country when he came out of there.
Yeah, there was something in the water in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, we could go through a long list of quarterbacks. I mean, I grew up in George Blanda's hometown.
Some tough people came out of that town, boy.
Yeah. I grew up in George Blanda's hometown of Youngwood, PA. Used to golf with his brother. His brother was an All-American linebacker at Pitt, but blew his knee out.
Wow.
Stan Musial was right down the road. Joe Montana was from right down the road. Heavyweight champ Michael Moore was from right down the road. Arnold Palmer was from right near me. Yeah, there were a lot of athletes came out of there. Ken Griffey Jr. was born down there, and of course his father.
Yeah,
no joke. A lot of talent. Like what Eddie said, it's something in the water for sure.
Yeah, and interesting. There was another guy there. Just an interesting side story. Bruce Del Canton, who was a knuckleball pitcher, and he taught Tim Wakefield how to throw it in the minors because Tim Wakefield realized he wasn't going to make the pros as a position player, and he had him teach him how to throw the knuckler.
Wow!
The Yankees
the Yankees had a tough time against Wakefield.
Everybody had a tough time against Wakefield. I tell you, in the 90 or 91, what was it, 91 or 92 or both, those playoff games with the Pirates versus Atlanta, they went to 7 games. They went down to the last out every time. And but they couldn't touch Wakefield. He won every game he pitched.
Wow. Yeah, man. No joke.
So I saw him. I was at spring training, and I saw him. I was getting some signatures. I have a ball up there, and I went up to him and I said, "I want you to sign this where you hold your knuckler." And he did. So that's one of my favorite pieces.
That's awesome.
I was a huge Wakefield fan.
Yeah, man. You know, that's a rookie card that I don't have. I have to go through my collection. I'm pretty sure I
have a Wakefield auto.
You have a Wakefield?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm big into autos. So you know what? Again, another card he put. I'm gonna make a note. Wakefield.
He's making a want list as we go.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's constant. It's always growing.
So that's interesting. I used to years ago. I pulled this out. I discovered it. years ago, I had put together, a notebook with all my players that I wanted.
I saw that video.
Cards,
but you found it.
Yeah, and I got it after years, and I'm going through it, and I'm like checking them all off. I got this, I got that, I got this, I got that. It was like I got almost every single one of them. I was surprised to see that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I write it down and I put it on an Excel sheet. I have it color coded. It's next level. It's crazy. So all right. So growing up, what cartoons were you into back then?
Oh, what cartoons? Hey, nobody's ever asked me that question before. So my favorite was Scooby-Doo. That was my favorite cartoon growing up. Of course, I liked the Hanna-Barbera with where they used to do the chases with what was that dog's name? Smutly or Smedley or something.
Scrappy?
No, you remember the Hanna-Barbera used to do the car chases.
Oh,
In fact, South Park did a spoof on that. Anyway, yeah, I'm sure you are. But Scooby-Doo was my favorite cartoon growing up. I like Bugs Bunny too. But of course, that was before my time. I'm not that old. But I saw the reruns.
So all right, so obviously you mentioned that you collected sport cards. Was it strictly just baseball, or did you collect hockey, basketball?
So I would buy whatever cards I could get my hands on. Of course, baseball was the most popular and the easiest to find, but I would also buy football cards. I remember buying packs of basketball. I think it was 79, the one with the circle, 78 or 79. And I remember buying hockey cards, and I didn't even know any of the players because growing up in Pittsburgh, the Penguins were terrible. And it wasn't until Mario Lemieux came that anybody really paid attention to hockey. We had Rick Kehoe and Sal Apps, and we had some decent players, but nobody in Pittsburgh watched hockey, right? Until Lemieux came. Now it's as big as any other sport. But I would buy whatever I found. I remember they remade Elvis cards. I always have some of those, and I was enamored with all the cards. But it was the sports cards and specifically the baseball that I was really into. In fact, at one point, I think we all go through this where you're like, I can't collect everything. Let me narrow my focus. And so at one point, I had traded all my football cards for baseball cards. And I was like, I just can't pursue everything. I'm just going to collect baseball. So years later, I spent a lot of time rebuilding my vintage football collection. And now I have a rather large one.
Okay. All right. So I know you spent a lot of time buying these cards. Were you just focused on the cards, or did you also have some toys that you were into also when you were a kid growing up?
I did Nerf basketball. I was an only child, so I would play that by myself for years. I remember when I was little, I watched there was a movie called The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, and it starred Dr. J. And I have his poster hanging up. Dr. J was my favorite basketball player. So I had it, and it was in Pittsburgh, right? And I would sit there and pretend like I was Dr. J in that movie and play my Nerf basketball. But I played sports. I grew up in the country. We had a field for everything. We had one field for football, one for baseball, and then we had a neighbor put up a basketball hoop on the road. It was literally on our road. And so you had to stop anytime a car came, but we didn't get a lot of traffic. And every season we would play ball. That's as soon as I got home, we'd be out there. We'd play basketball in the snow, play football in the snow. It didn't matter. And so I just always played sports. And I was one of those kids that loved to practice baseball. Like I would just practice for hours, and I couldn't understand why nobody else wanted to practice. Because I just loved playing.
So obviously your favorite sport is baseball.
It was growing up, but I mean, you cannot grow up in Pittsburgh and not be a football fanatic. And there was a time where I got really big into watching hockey in the early 2000s, and still enjoy it. And more of an NBA fan. I'm kind of the opposite of a lot of people. I've always liked the NBA more than college. I know a lot of people are opposite there. But I've watched a lot of NBA over the years too. So I'm just a sports fan. I watch golf. I mean, you name it, I'll watch it. I've even got wrapped up in curling in the Olympics, which, yeah, whatever.
It's a pretty awesome sport.
Yeah. You know, there's a nuance to everything. It's like, I didn't really, my grandfather was a big golfer, my dad, and they would watch golf and I would be so bored. But once I started playing golf, oh my God, I'd sit there and watch it for hours because, you know, you understand the nuances. And I like to watch tennis, mostly women's tennis, though. Not that into men's, but.
So, all right. So do you remember the very first time you got like your first pack of baseball cards or if it was a single card or so talk to us about that, because that, you know, that's got to be something special.
Well, I remember the first pack I ever opened, believe it or not. I don't remember who I got in there, but I can envision the cards. And I was a little kid. My mom always claims that she bought me my first cards when I was 2 years old. I don't remember buying them that early, but I have a distinct memory of going to a little, you know, convenience store with her. And this is kind of before the Sheets and 7-Elevens were so popular. They were more in the big cities. And so these were little private. It was a little private store. And it was 1973 Topps baseball. And I still remember like the design. And I had a babysitter back then. And one day she came over because she knew I liked cards. And she brought me a big shoebox full of 1971 and 72 cards. And I think there were some 73s. And those were amazing to me because I had never seen those. You know, those were vintage to me at the time, even though they were 1 year before or 2 years before. And so that's it. The first rookie card I remember chasing, and they weren't called a rookie card at the time, right? That term didn't exist, but was Dave Parker in 74. And we just wanted him because he was the hot young player in Pittsburgh.
Wow, man. So, you know, you did mention that you invested in a car that was $22 back in the days, and you were a young kid. How did you get the money to
well, I wouldn't say invested. I mean, I didn't consider it an investment. I just, you know, I was a baseball fan, I was a card fan, and that card was worth more to me than the $22 I had saved up from birthday gifts and whatever. I don't even know where I got the money. I mean, I don't. But when I got older, I started working when I was like 13 years old. So I always had some cash on me. And I would spend it. We used to dig up change. And my little town was like, it was like a mile through the woods. And in the summers, my friend and I, we would scrounge up whatever change we could. Now, you have to understand, a pack of baseball cards back then was like 25 cents. So we would get our parents' change or whatever, walk through the woods, and his sister, she smoked, and back then they would just sell cigarettes to anybody, and so she was just a little older than us. She was substantially older than us. She was like early high school or in high school or something like that, and she would pay us to get her cigarettes when we buy the baseball cards and bring them back to her because she didn't want to walk a mile. And so we would do that. And they'd be like, "Are these cigarettes for you?" We'd be like, "No, they're for his older sister." And the woman would be like, "Okay," and she'd sell them to you. It was ridiculous. But anyway, you know, that's what we did. Anytime we had some extra change, we would walk down almost every day in the summer. We'd come up with something.
So you did whatever it took.
I remember opening 1978 baseball cards like it was yesterday. I remember pulling the Dave Parker there too.
No.
Anytime if I'd see a Pirate, it didn't matter if he was a utility player, whatever. If it was a Pirate, I was all excited.
Wow. Okay. All right. So I'm curious. This is a question that is not sport card related at all, but I'm curious. Top 3 movies of all time.
That is so hard for me because there's so many great ones. I'll tell you, one of my all-time favorites, I just love the movie, is A History of Violence. Of course, love The Godfather. The second one's better. Let's see here. And you're putting me on the spot. I have so many that I like. There are certain movies, if they're on, I'll watch them.
I got you.
Growing up, Coming to America was my favorite movie. I must have seen that 32 times.
Oh, funny.
McDoodles,
movie.
McDowell's.
Yeah.
But then I don't know, they had a new one that came out a few months ago. It was okay, but it's just I went into it expecting, I guess, too much.
Well, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, it wasn't as good as the original, but I think they kept, like, a lot of these movies that they remake, like Charlie's Angels or whatever, they lose the total feel for what it was. Like, they should name it something else because it is no longer that movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
But with Coming to America, they kept the integrity of the original, I thought. And so I was happy about that. It wasn't a totally different kind of vibe.
I agree.
It's kind of hard to beat mid '80s Eddie Murphy. I mean, he was on a different level, different plateau.
Yes, he was at that time. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to top himself.
So all right, everybody, look, if you're in the chat, drop a like. I've got a link to the Mangini collection right here pinned in the chat. Go over, drop a follow, a subscribe over to, on his channel. Hurry back because you don't want to miss any of this juice, any of these nuggets. Okay, so John, do you own any? Because obviously we see the collection. We see the old vintage collection, the cards, the different sports. I actually have seen a video of you showing some Todd McFarlane like figures and whatnot. Do you have really old like vintage figures, toys, or anything like that?
I don't have vintage, but I have lots of McFarlane's and starting lineups. I have them in boxes stored away.
Okay.
I have a few hanging up.
I
got some hockey up there. I have Joe Sakic. I was a huge Joe Sakic fan. I have a Paul Coffey. I was a huge Paul Coffey fan. And I got a Lemieux. Just some that are sitting up there. But I have different. I have a Matsui and Albert Pujols in there. McFarlane's that are the Chase figures.
I have no idea if they have a good value resale, in the secondary market on eBay or something. Did they hold their value?
You know what? I mean, the Chase ones, some of them used to be really sought after. Like I remember the Michael Vick. Everybody wanted it. The LeBron. And there's one, I have one at home that's LeBron and Carmelo when they first came up. And it's like each of them, it's a dual one. They started making those. I have a extra large Jerome Bettis. It's like this big.
The bus.
Yeah. So I did get into those. And there were some other figures too. It's escaping me, but they had some with Derek Jeter and those Mike Piazza, I remember. The name's escaping me. They were they were pro something, pro star. I'm not remembering. You don't see those too often. In fact, mine are the only ones I ever see. And then they also had these cool ones. I have one of each. I have two of the one, but Barry Bonds and Randy Johnson. They're about this big, and they're in a stadium, and it's like you push a button and it has sound with it, like stadium sounds.
Cool. Oh, that's cool.
And I've never pushed the buttons because I didn't know if you could wear that out or what. So I've just never even touched it.
You got to just press at least once.
I probably did back in the day. I mean, we're talking back in like 2001 is when I got them, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I had a bunch of Danbury Mint stuff also that did very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I had they had came out with a bunch of different stadiums. The Danbury Mint.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they came out with a few things. They were real nice stuff.
Well, when you talk about vintage figures, one of the most valuable is the old bobblehead of Roberto Clemente. And it's really hard to find that in, good condition. I mean, they weren't that well made. They're almost paper mache. And then of course, the Heartlands, a lot of people were into the Heartlands. And there have been times where I thought about moving in that direction, but I'm mostly a card guy, and I start going down these rabbit holes, and I'm sure people listening do the same thing. And before you know it, you have a big collection of something other than cards.
Yeah, yes. I know that all too well. Recently,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going down the whole NFT rabbit hole. Has been crazy.
Yeah, if I have to select, it's going to be a card. Like if I have to choose, it's
absolutely. I get that for sure. A question came in on the chat from Ray from Philly. He's asking who's going to the National in Atlantic City.
Ray, my man. I'm planning on coming to Philadelphia. See you. But I'm planning on going to the National.
Yeah, I told you I owe you lunch that day.
Yeah, with a Jack and Coke, you said.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
a double. I was gonna make it a double because you said I could only have one.
Man, man, I was dying. Eddie said one drink, only one drink. We'll make it a double.
I'll buy you the drinks.
I'll tell you, I can't wait till the National. It'll be my first one, so I'm just.
It'll be my first one too. I've never been to one.
Yeah. Yes, it looks cool.
So John, well, obviously you have such an extensive collection. What color pieces? You don't have to give me one or whatever, but what are your most valuable? You don't have to give me the most, but some that have some good value associated to them.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't even. You're not going to believe this. People don't believe me, but I don't keep up with the prices. And over the last 2 years, I mean, God only knows. I look at some cards and what they're selling for, and I'm like, I have that, but I had no idea it was going for that. You know what I mean? Like it's just crazy.
I could understand that.
A lot of the cards from the early 90s and late 80s that I always wrote off that you could buy anytime for next to nothing, all of a sudden those are starting to sell for a decent amount of money. Like a card that you couldn't even give away selling for 100 now. So to be honest with you, I don't follow that. I have lots and lots of, great rare cards, and I honestly don't know what they're worth specifically. I know, I can tell you what my rarest cards are. And I know your channel is kind of you talk maybe investments and so forth, but that's just not something that I ever discuss or think about really. I know the price of cards at 2 times. If I'm buying one, I research and figure out what's a fair price, and if I'm selling one, I research and figure out what's a good price to sell it for, and that's it. And that's God's truth. Like in the old days, you get the price guides, and every month it would come out. You're like, 25 cents. $1.25. It's up.
Right.
But I don't do that anymore.
There's a lot of cards you have, John, that are not that you really can't put a price on at the moment. There's no comps.
So you
have to send them.
That's very true.
You would have to send them to a big auction house, and you would actually set the price at that point, because there's a lot of cards that you have that are like that. And I was going to say, I totally believe you that you don't know the prices of the cards, because there's times where I'll see you show off, a $10,000 card, and the next card will be a $5 card. So, I mean, it's not about the prices.
I love them all the same.
Yeah.
I understand. And that's why I love your channel.
I mean,
to be honest with you, I mean, if things in my life got bad and I was in financial difficulty, the last things I'd be like in the movie The Jerk. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but when he's going bankrupt, he starts grabbing things and he's like, I'm going to take this Babe Ruth and that's all I need. And I'm going to take this Honuswagner and that's all I need. I'm going to take this Rocky Marciano and that's all I need. That would be me. I'd be like taking them all. I would sell my car. I would sell whatever I could sell first before my card. So what my point is in all likelihood, it's going to be my family, or, if I could donate them or something like that, that's going to end up with them. And so I don't really care what they're valued at. I have them insured for a good amount of money. And, is that the exact amount of money they're worth? I don't know. But I know that should anything happen to them, they get stolen or anything like that, at least I'll be compensated for what I put into them.
That's smart.
Okay, so what about the most sentimental value that you have on a piece or you know, several cards?
Man, I have so many. What you have to understand is I have, you know, over 100,000 cards.
Holy
right?
moly.
With very few doubles. Because over the years, back in the day, I would sell my doubles to help me buy something else.
Right.
You know, I'm at the point in my life now where I don't necessarily have to do that. I can still buy new stuff, but at one point I had to sell, you know, doubles to be able to get some of the purchases that I wanted to make. But I mean, I have so many. I have this, some of my favorites I have laying around. One of those things that's the most precious to me, and what you have to understand is I started collecting long before grading even existed. And it would cost me about $1 million to grade all my cards.
Holy crap.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
So obviously I have a lot of raw cards from when I was young. And even in the early days of grading, I only sent in a select few, you know, just to give it a try, because I wasn't even sure I was into it, you know. And as of today, I'm not even sure I'm into it, but it is what it is. But this is one of my absolute favorites because I remember I wanted this as a kid, and it was $150. I saw one and one only in my lifetime, and it was $150, which was just an incredible amount of money back then. And so when I got older, I found a nice one. It's a 1909, I guess they're 1909 to 11, Colgan's chips, and it's of honuswagner.
Wow.
Wow.
Now these are this is a case that it came in. They came in these little tins. And their thing was they're the only round gum. There was a piece of gum on top of the card.
Wow.
And it's just a set I'm kind of enamored with. Here's the Ty Cobb.
Wow.
And here's the Cy Young. I have a whole bunch of these, but it's just one of those sets I've just always been enamored with. But the honuswagner in particular, because I wanted it so bad when I was young and couldn't get it. And it's the same image as the T206. And because it was gum, you know, he would be in this set.
Right.
And it wasn't tobacco. Because even though he used tobacco, he didn't want kids. He didn't want to promote it to kids.
So you posted a video with there were several different cards. One of them, it wasn't a card, but it was like a big oversized card. You said it was like an accordion.
Oh yeah.
One was a honuswagner. What would be more? That's it.
Yeah, these are 1909 postcards. They came like in an accordion style. This one, and it's cool because it has a 1909 stamp on the back. And this is, you know, the 1909 Pirates is regarded as one of the greatest, or it always was, as one of the greatest baseball teams of all time, one of the great World Series champions. And, you know, so as far as I know, there's only ever been one of these graded.
Wow.
So
but
this
I just acquired from another YouTuber the whole set, and some of them are still intact and together.
Wow.
But I love to get in the old postcards. I have an old, I don't know, some viewers may be familiar with Max Stein postcards. Are you guys familiar with those?
I'm not.
Well, they're
Max
from
Stein. I know JD McCarthy.
Yeah, they're Max Steins, and they're amongst the rarest postcards in the hobby, if not the rarest. They're certainly up there. And I had acquired a while back a Buck Weaver, and I'm a big Buck Weaver fan. Of course, he was the third baseman on the 1919 Black Sox. But the cool thing is there's writing on it. So it was a postcard that was sent. It has the original stamp, the original postmark, which again, if you have it graded, would grade low. But on the back, it's somebody writing back home saying how much they miss being home and playing ball with the other person. It's either a friend or somebody's brother. I kind of get the impression it's his brother, and how he misses home and he misses playing ball. And he had sent him this.
So cool.
This postcard of Buck Weaver.
So yeah, I have a few of them. They're my favorite pieces that I have. Like I have this. This is a This is something from Charlie Sheeran where he's writing somebody, you know, this is on an index card, but I also have a bunch of what's it called, postcards as well. Like this is Matt Bass. Mine are more from the 50s and 60s, but yeah, I think that they're the coolest things I have. I feel like.
I think the
Well,
stamp.
you know, this is one of my problems with grading, because certainly when it has the stamp and the postmark and it has a personal message from somebody, the historical perspective of that is so much bigger than PSA slapping a 1 on. You know,
Right?
it's so much. It's not worthy of a 1. They should come up with another kind of grade.
Right. Or just authenticate it and slab it, maybe.
Yeah.
There's really no number you could put on that. It's amazing. They're amazing.
It's history.
Some of them.
I mean, think about this idea. How about, you know how like Beckett it'll give subgrades. Well, how about you do a grade for the front and a grade for the back? You know, like a 9 on the front and a 1 on the back, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you have these cards that are just pristine and look 10s, but they have a little residue because somebody put them in a scrapbook in 1897.
Yeah.
And they get a 1, even though they're a nicer example than any 5 you'll see. You know.
Yeah, it's
on the front.
So you know, I did remember hearing you mention that you would love to open up a museum. Is that something like legit that you were serious about?
It absolutely legit. It was always something that I thought about doing, but quite frankly, when the Baseball Hall of Fame opened up the museum, they took a lot of my ideas, and I'm not saying they took them from me. They didn't take them from me, but they're doing a lot of the things I wanted to do. Like for instance, they took a bike wheel and they put, you know, a card in there and you could spin it like we used to do on our Huffy bikes. That was something that I was going to do. I was going to put a wheel up on but anyway, that is still a dream of mine. I was thinking about maybe buying a house that was zoned properly and calling it House of Cards, or
I love it.
The Sports Card Cafe is an idea I had, which would be more of a cafe kind of a thing, where I could have part of it would be a museum, part of it would be a little cafe showing old ball games, and, you know, certainly new ball games when they're on, but when they're not on, like old films of old players, old games, having a little section where we could have little card shows or signings, and possibly even, you know, with all the cards around, like a place that you could rent out for a business function, you know, kind of thing.
That would work.
So they're ideas I have, but you know, what always stops me is the fear of my cards in some other place by themselves at night, and people coming through, and with the prices right now, you know, theft and that kind of thing worries me. So that's what's really kind of hindering me moving forward with that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you can put the duplicates over at the cafe or something.
Well, the other tough part that I didn't really think of when I first wanted to do this was the lighting, and having old cards from the 1800s out on display. They will fade in light over time. Certainly autographs are susceptible. So my room, you know, I have black curtains. I always have the door closed and it's black. And, you know, I only have this one little light on when I'm in here, which actually isn't that often. So what I do with my displays is I'll move them around a lot. So no cards are out all the time for too long of periods.
Oh, yeah.
And the really old cards I put away. I don't even display those at all, because you take like the good ones, those old cards from the 1800s, a lot of them fade real bad, and it's hard to find them not faded, and I don't need them to fade anymore.
So going with that, obviously you have a whole setup, it's in your house. What does the family feel, think about it, and friends and family that, when they come over?
Well, it's funny you say that, because as I said, when I was growing up, I was, grew up in the country. I collected in obscurity, and really a couple friends from the neighborhood who collected them with me, and my family were the only ones that even knew I had them. And I remember my parents were selling their house at one time. They were moving to a new house, and the realtor called my mom one day, and she said, I showed your house today, and the couple doesn't want to buy your house, but they want to buy the cards that are in that one room. They wanted to buy the baseball cards because in my room I just had them everywhere. And then when we moved to the new house, and there were times like they would give me the spare room, and I would make a little card room, and I'd sort in there, and that was fun. Then when we moved to our new home, they had this big unfinished. Half of it was unfinished, half of it was finished. And they didn't use the basement, so I took over the half finished part, and I had a little museum down there. I would do things like I took like a briefcase and I opened it up, and I would have all my tobacco cards in there, and I'd have shoe boxes, and I'd have these little displays. And when my family would come over, they'd always want to go downstairs and check out my collection, and we'd stay down there for long periods of time and talk sports and show these players, especially Pittsburgh. So I have very fond memories with my family coming over and sharing in my collection.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. They support it. A funny comment by the chosen roster. First, earlier, when you were showing the honuswagner, he said, "Where are the white gloves?"
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, and he just mentioned the YouTube family fully supports the room.
All right, I'll show you what I think is the rarest Satchel Paige card.
Woo! Very nice.
This is 1962, right? 62. Pittsburgh exhibit. These were given out at Kennywood Park. And there's some of the rarest cards.
Wow.
I would love to have the Clemente in here. I've never even put my eyes on it. PSA's only graded 4 of these.
Wow. Has PSA ever graded a Clemente?
You know what? I don't know. I have to check.
Very interesting. Wow.
And now the chosen roster, my man Sean, he turned me on to these, and he had sent me one. And when I was looking at it, I found this one, which I liked even better. These are really, really impossible to find. And it's the only baseball card I know that the wrapper of the candy is the card.
Oh,
this
yes,
is
I remember when you
this is a
showed
Jimmy
it.
Fox.
This is fire. This right here. That, like, how the heck?
Yeah, it's a 19.
preserved?
It's an Overland candy. I need my glasses, my man.
No, oh man, yeah.
1936 Overland Candy Corp.
Wow. The thing is that for them to open it that way, where they were careful,
Right?
And we're talking back then.
Most of the ones you will find are cut off here. I mean, you don't find them in full condition. Like they just like opened it at the top. But here's the interesting thing, and another disadvantage of grading is this is probably the finest example you'd ever find in your life. But because you have to open the package, right?
Right.
It's automatically going to be a 1.5 or 1. Automatically, because you have to open the package to get the candy out when they were a kid. So you're never going to find one higher. And most of them are cut off. So this is actually the full thing. And what's it get? A 1.5. But
That's a shame.
But like you're not doing the card justice. I always think that you should grading companies should grade it based on what it is. This is not a Prism card you're pulling out in 2021. It wasn't pristine when you bought it. So right. I think there should be a grading scale based on what it is. Like you're never going to find a T206 in a 10. They didn't come out of the cigarette pack in a 10. Right. Because they were soft cigarette
they don't even have a listing at 10.
Yeah, you know, when I see a 7 or higher in a tobacco card, I got to question it.
Yeah.
I mean,